Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Rise and shine. It's a beautiful Monday morning here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. I'm Kayode Okikule.
From Abuja, good morning. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, whether it's Lagos or Abuja, it seems every state in Nigeria has one potential or the other in terms of agriculture. Yeah. So it is cheering to know that one state or the other is doing something, at least to get that issue on the wraps, especially at a time when we are talking about food security and the rest of it. So it is most certainly a cheering thing to hear that in Nasarawa State, a step is being taken in that direction to make farming easy for the people. One state, 36, maybe there are so many other things that a number of other states are doing that we are not aware of. But take a quick look at this one that's happening in Nasarawa State.
Agrarian communities in Nasarawa State at the Karu axis is Koya. Although the people rear cattle and engage in fishing, farming remains their main occupation. The arability of their land attracts people from the city to the community to engage in the activity also. Lack of access to water affects output. Farmers of the community cultivate with difficulty.
Gaskiya muna shan wahala kan ruwa. Dan ruwan nan muna jan ruwa daga kogi ma nisan da muke sawa bondiri biyu, bondiri uku.
Equipment are on site, an earth dam, a collaboration between the River Basin Development Authority and the state is underway. Irrigation farming, improved farming activities, increase in yield are what the people anticipate.
It will help us a lot. Supposing the water here is not enough, the dam here can gain from it so that we can make it for irrigation. It will help us, it will develop the community and the entire people around the community, be able to farm more than what we have been doing before. We farm it more quantity than what we have been doing before.
Gaskiya in akwai ruwa zan iya yi ko hectare biyu ko uku tunda ruwa ya zo kusa.
The authorities remain highly optimistic too.
You can see there is vast land within within the area that the dam is being constructed. And with the vast land, a lot of people are going to get into irrigation farming. Having this year-round farming within that area is going to be a very good one. It will, first of all, give a lot of youth their employment opportunity. It will improve even the IGR, the economic activities of the people of Karu local government and its environment.
The dam, when completed, will be the only one in the western zone of the state which could stand in as a source of water, hydropower, and boost all year-round farming. Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
Well, certainly cheering, isn't it? But then it is a start. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. And we're always quick to mouth that Nigeria can easily feed Africa, feed the world. I mean, not just feed Nigeria. I think we've gone past all of that. We're quick to mouth that, but in the operationalization of it, we see that we still have a lot of challenges. And if the prices of food items are anything to go by, it's clear that we have a lot of work to do in converting that, again, potential in terms of land, arable land, in terms of how blessed we are. Really, I mean, you can't count just how much crops would prosper, as it were, in Nigeria. So that, and then the people. I mean, we have what I don't know what the consensus is now. It's interesting about the census. Is it 160 million? Is it 200 million or more than that? But the point is, we have huge, population. So all of that is just the perfect setup for agriculture. By the way, it's Ramadan, so it might be a bit tricky to speak about food right now because it's Ramadan, and I will wish Muslim faithful, the very best during this period. But the point here is that we have talked about this too much, and I think that it's high time we started seeing that. And I want us to come up with innovations. Yes, it's good to do irrigation. Water is vital to agriculture. Yes, indeed. But we need to also look at ways to ensure that more people participate in this. We have the people, right? But a lot of people are, coming to Lagos trying to get white or blue collar jobs or all of that. But there's a vast, I recall we had that conversation, the value chains in agriculture. Just pick, packaging alone, pick logistics, pick even the media, by the way, there's advertising and all of that. But I look forward to a time where we aggregate all of this into a one-stop shop, maybe a website and all of that, because there are lots of young Nigerians who could do well in agriculture with the skills they currently have. Is it their strength? Is it tech ability? Is it their packaging skills, logistics, and all of that? So I wish we could have that one-stop shop, perhaps online. A lot of people do online things. I mean, if they could do crypto and all of that, have it online where a lot of young people can just access information and say, you know what, this is a value chain I'm interested in. Let's go with it. And don't forget the cooperative angle of this. I think it has been said time and again that China used this model, coming together. A lot of people still do, what is it called now? They still use the cutlass, the hose, and all of that, where you can actually go into mechanize. So if you can band it together, as it were, come together, have a community say, you know what, let's focus on maybe cucumber. Let's focus on pineapple, by the way. I just remember the joke from one of my colleagues who planted pineapple like a year ago and still looks at it. When are you going to grow so I can harvest you? But the point is we are blessed and we should keep thinking of ways to improve on that blessing. Mark, I know you had a celebratory weekend, as it were, but Abuja is also quite arable, I should say.
You know, Kayode, there is almost nowhere that is not arable in this country. Almost, even the places that appear like deserts in the dry season, just let some rain fall. I can never forget my 1 year of service in Plateau State. It remains one of my most memorable experiences. I remember that we had gone to camp February 14 and we wrapped up maybe in the first week of March. And I was sent to a community that was down south of Jos. And you know how Plateau, I mean, even by the very name, it's a plateau indeed. So anywhere from Jos, and I think the highest plateaus are around maybe Jos and some other communities that have hills. I'm not very certain. I mean, I could be wrong, but I know that Jos, is pretty high up there. So I was sent to Kwampan, and Kwampan is down south. It's closer to Lafia in Nasarawa State than it is to Jos. So we were driving down south, we were being conveyed down south, and I remember the people in the bus were crying because that was not the posting that they wanted. Everybody wanted to be in Jos, not Jos South and all the fancy places in Plateau State. And myself and my fellow corps members were being transported down to Kwampan, and we're regaled with tales about how that place is where nothing grows. It is terrible, it is horrible. And if you were really in that bus, you might have had that impression because it was the middle of it was the peak of the dry season. Even the riverbeds, even the rivers, what am I saying? The rivers were dry, they were non-existent. The riverbeds were just plain sand. People were digging the riverbeds to be able to get the sand underneath. And I still remember saying, what kind of place is this? What kind of dry place is this? You know, when the rains came, Ayo and Kayode, it was amazing. The things that grew in that place. You need like a swampy area to grow rice paddies. They grew rice there. They grew the biggest yams. I mean, Plateau, well, Plateau used to be a part of Benue, or there used to be one state. And I'm sure that they could argue, about whose yams are the biggest, but they grew some massive yams there. They grew corn, they grew millet, they grew guinea corn, they grew almost everything. They grew beans, cowpeas, you name it, soybeans. They grew every single thing in that place in the rainy season. It was amazing just how lush and green it became when the rains came. So you can imagine what is possible if only we invest in the right infrastructure for our people. If only we do what is right when we say that we want to do agriculture. I remember interviewing 1 or 2 ministers of agriculture, and they tell me how, we're making some progress. So maybe we are making some progress. But we know because they travel as well. I've had the privilege to travel to a few countries. And one of the countries I know we look down upon until maybe we said to understand that these people are not our mates is India. India and ourselves, have a lot in common in terms of colonization and in terms of maybe indexes in terms of where we are. But India has put its back to the work. I remember traveling from New Delhi to Agra. I went to see the Taj Mahal, one of the 7 wonders of the world. And the 3-hour journey from New Delhi to Agra, it was farming on both sides. They didn't have to tell you that, we are investing in farming. You could see it. You could see well-cultivated you know, vast land, growing all manner of things up until you got to Agra. And I was saying, my God, these are people who are serious with agriculture. What is wrong with traveling from here to a place like Jos, that's Abuja, to a place like Jos, and all you see on your way are vast, you know, lands of, you know, cultivated land. Kayode Ayo, you've taken the train from here to Kaduna, and you saw patches here and there of people just trying to eke out a living, subsistence farming. What if we really put our backs to the work and do what we need to do by providing the right infrastructure? What is possible with that? And you know, the amazing thing, it is not a federal government reserve. The states also have a say in agriculture. What are the states doing about it? Big question.
I remember looking at a document some maybe 10 years or thereabout ago by Leke Oldham, and he had a way of, you know, dividing Nigeria into, of course, 6 regions, and looked at the strengths of each region and said, okay, this place is good for this particular kind of agriculture, this one is good for this particular kind of agriculture, this one is good for trading, this one is good for this, was good for that. And it only reminded me of what we have done before. For God's sake, we had the First Republic, where agriculture was the mainstay of the country. We have done it before. What is wrong with checking our books again and doing it all over again and making Nigeria great again using agriculture? There are those who argue that agriculture is enough to feed all of Nigeria or all of Africa. There are those who are saying, okay, maybe add 1 or 2 other things. But there's a lot of conversation around that one, but that's not for today. Let's begin with the papers. Let's begin with the Guardian newspaper this morning, and it is talking money. And of course, it is important if we're going to talk about agriculture, isn't it? Well, the lead is talking about money. Amid pressure on Naira, experts proffer options to shore up Forex. Naira risks worse plunge. Market differential at all-time high of 173 Naira to the dollar. Political risk, global move towards higher interest rates worsen situation. Dollarization of investments, savings intensify. Naira will hit point of no return if FX is liberalized. That's ascribed to Fashua. Find out the details of that on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Insecurity, Buhari's government overwhelmed, Obasanjo warns. What does that mean? It's this other one. You'll find the story on page 2. Adeboye, I worry more for failing economy, insecurity than 2023 elections. Find that story on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
You see, while the Guardian leads with something on economy, of course, it doesn't shy away from the security stories, and that's what you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And this is how the paper leads. El Rufai's call for mercenaries confirms APC's failure. That's coming from the PDP. Presidency attacks PDP governors over stance on Buhari's performance. It's a page 25 read. Yes, pages 8 and 25 of the Daily this morning. And that one, Abuja Imam suspended over inciting sermon, in quote, only Allah can dethrone, he says. This is a developing story, it will seem. And just right next to that, again on something related to security and the economy, oil theft pushing Nigeria into bankruptcy. Adeboye says, I'm worried about current national melee, not 2023, he adds. It was quite a weekend, really. Now, different issues coming up from different personalities, and this is just one of the many. And let me just leave you with this particular story. I'm actually spoiled for choice, but policemen reject 500,000 Naira bribe, arrest suspects with Arizona drug worth 10 million Naira. So that's it, page 27. I'll leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
Certainly something to cheer on the front page of Nigerian Tribune. On the front page of New Telegraph, not the headline, certainly not the headline to cheer. State of the nation, insecurity has overwhelmed Buhari's government. That's from OBJ and Adeboye. Say Nigeria's roads, rail, air no longer safe. ACF, engage ex-servicemen, hunters to tackle insecurity. Says call for mercenaries must be treated with caution. RCCG's GEO, that's General Overseer, laments country's huge debt, poor economy, expresses doubts over 2023 polls. Amechi lied about bulletproof coaches, that's according to APC chieftain. And Nigeria, a nation under siege by terrorists. Pages 2, 3, 4, and 9 will give you all of the details. You also see this, Kalu to APC, revealed presidential zoning formula, urges party to zone ticket to Southeast, says he's eminently qualified to govern Nigeria. And Adamu says APC poised to retain power in 2023. Look at this, personnel expenses gulp 449.5 billion naira in 11 banks. GT Co, Stanbic IBTC, Fidelity record low cost. That is also there. And mutilated notes. CBN imposes 400% penalty on banks. So you go to the bank and your notes are pretty bad. Don't be surprised if they start to reject them, because this is what they're going to be paying for sending mutilated notes to the banks. And if you look just underneath that nameplate, you have a number of other stories which I might leave you to do yourself, but I want to take this one. Nigeria abolishes COVID-19 tests for vaccinated travelers. So some progress made there. Page 2 will give you details. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Flip to the leadership newspaper, and the front page, the lead of the paper isn't so cheering either. Rising insecurity, hiring mercenaries, not an option. Our troops are capable. Subscribe to CSOs, find the details on page 4. And a number of riders there you'll find on the paper. Right under the nameplate, Nigerian ports lose 4.5 trillion naira in 5 years to absence of single window. You want to find out exactly what that means. 5.4 trillion naira in 5 years. That's an average 1 trillion naira plus.
Yearly. Certainly not what we want to be losing at this time. Well, we're still cultivating the front pages for you this morning. The agriculture conversation is still in my head, right?
Obviously.
Take a look at the Daily Trust next. And this is what you find there. How NRC ignored warnings on planned attack on Abuja Kaduna train. Leaked letters reveal alerts to railway months ahead. Repeated intelligence reports show attack coming. MD admits receiving alert, says suspension, not the solution. So this is still in the news, especially because there's an operation to rescue those not accounted for, those who may have been kidnapped. So it's still a developing one right there. And on top of that, you see again, Nigeria targets 12.4 trillion naira from non-oil commodities. That's from NEPC. You wonder how this will grow. Find more details on the inside pages. I'll take this last one for you. It's on security again. 12 people, 19 cattle killed in Plateau attacks. I'll just leave it there for the Daily Trust. Okay.
The Abuja Inquirer is next up here, and they have this. Exposed. Rot in telecoms industry is the elite story. International firms stifle Nigerian companies, disregard local content laws, cheat federal government of VAT, NCC indicted. You'll find all the details on page 3 of the paper. You also see on top of the nameplate a story which broke in Abuja last week that an Abuja chief, a local traditional ruler, was abducted, and this is what it's saying: sell his house to raise 20 million naira. Abductors tell family of Abuja chief. So they're not accepting that there is no money. They want the man's house sold. So if his house is sold before he comes back, where does he go back to? Anyway, some people say life first before you talk about property. But that's what the Abuja Inquirer has on top of its nameplate. Sell his house to raise 20 million naira, abduct the Self family of Abuja chief. You also see this, FCT IRS generates 75% tax from payee. So we're taxpayers here in Abuja, at least those of us that have, paid employment. You find out details on page 6. Garki hospital ownership tussle, staff uncertain even with injunction. So all of the stories you need to know about the Federal Capital Territory is right here on inside the Abuja Inquirer. Let's leave it there for the paper.
The Daily Independent has this one, also talking economy. Experts urge Naira devaluation to curb external imbalances. Not again. Say measure will bring more forex trading to official market. Want improved trading with other countries on non-oil sector. Find the details of that. I'm pretty sure the economists are going to be speaking to that shortly.
Absolutely.
And right below the picture, right under the picture on the front page, experts expect more attacks on airports, roads, rails. Security specialists warn. What does that mean? You find the details on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And right above the nameplate, insecurity has overwhelmed Buhari's government. Ascribed to former President Obasanjo, says nobody is safe anywhere in Nigeria. And right beside that one, I don't know if there will be elections in 2023. Ascribed to Pastor Adeboye. Find the details. The rest of it on the inside pages.
Well, insecurity is what the Daily Times leads with as well this morning. Buhari government overwhelmed Obasanjo. Laments that Nigerians traveling no longer safe on the road, in the train, at the airports, as you may have seen across the other dailies. And that one, the back and forth it will seem between the presidency and the PDP is also there. Presidency rejects PDP fantasy communique, that's in quotes. Says Buhari is striving to fix mess from opposition parties' long misrule. As I said, it's like a back and forth, and this has been on, I think, since 2015. But let's leave it there for Daily Times.
The Nigerian News Direct is talking about something that's been on in the news for a while. Tariff hike, multi-choice dares FG. Tribunals, multi-choice dares FG. Tribunals judgment, Senate. Really? Stories on page 2. Find the details. Begins implementation of 15% price hike on DSTV, GoTV subscriptions. Find out what all of that is about on page 2 of the paper. Terrorism. No unregistered SIM cards on operators' network. Telcos insist. Okay.
Well, I think this calls for more questions, actually.
Okay.
Because, so how are those calls made? How will they seem it is difficult? Well, the governor of Kaduna State says they can hear them, I think.
So the questions are limitless. Just look at the story that Malcolm referenced on the front page of Abuja Inquirer. Did they go to the house of the man to ask questions? They must have made phone calls, right? So how did that happen? Well, the details you'll find of this particular one on the inside pages of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And that wraps up a look at the front pages of the papers this morning. We're back after now to take on the issues for the day. Don't go anywhere.
Unguwambulus, a sleepy community near Sabon Tasha area of Chikun local government, is on the outskirts of Kaduna metropolis. At about 8 p.m. on Thursday, bandits in large numbers invaded the community, shooting sporadically to scare the residents. And in the process, they shot and killed 2 people while they abducted an unspecified number of persons. Among the kidnapped victims is a woman and her 4 children who were forced out of their home while they were having their dinner. Residents say the bandits operated for about 2 hours without any resistance.
Since I know my daughter is living here in Angwambulus, I called her number. It was ringing, but she was not picking. So that was when my husband said, okay, let him go down to Angwambulus to see exactly what is happening. And that was around after 10 to 11. So when he came, he saw her door wide opened. And the food that we are eating was there on the floor. And all their things were scattered. So he gathered everything. In fact, she even plugged water plugged water to bath. And when they took her, she left the heater, and the water was boiling. It was when my husband came that he off the heater.
When we are hiding, then I saw we are just hiding for back here. Then some people among them enter here. When they enter here, somebody is asking somebody that, how many people there for this house? I said, my house again, they are asking. Means, there is someone that, I said, God, I cannot conclude it, but let your will be done.
As it stands, the whereabouts of those kidnapped is yet unknown, but the latest attack has again thrown the community into fear. Many of the residents gather in groups to mourn the killing and abduction of their loved ones, while calling on the government to improve security in the area.
I just plead to the government to come to our rescue, to help us, because this is no longer the Kaduna State we know. The Kaduna we know is a peaceful land. This thing like this don't happen. But we know that this is not beyond government. They can still do something, they can still see us too.
Kidnapping for ransom is becoming a recurring decimal in Kaduna State. People are being abducted by bandits from their homes, farms, and even roads. And this has consequently led to the residents living in perpetual fear and helplessness.
Well, insecurity continues to hog the headlines and major reports for all the wrong reasons. And this is not just happening in the northern parts of the country, whether north, central, northwest, or northeast. We've had cases as well in the southern part of the country, in Ebonyi State, in Anambra, and some other, pockets of attacks and violence. And, it gets to a point where people begin to ask, what else are we missing? What else can we do? Or what more can we do? And these are the questions that we'll be putting out this morning. After all, we can't give up on these issues. And we're joined on the program this morning to do justice to those issues by Colonel Diary, former Army officer. He joins us live in our Lagos studio. Good morning, Colonel.
Good morning.
And joining us virtually is Mr. Adam Zabu, former Assistant Director, Internal Security at the SSS. He's a fellow International Institute of Professional Security and Security and Intelligence Consultant. He joins us via Zoom from Akure this morning. Good morning, Mr. Abu. It's great to have you on the program as well.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you.
Well, the issues are not pleasant, really, and I'd like to begin with Colonel Diary in our studio. I know from time to time, within your circles of intelligence experts, security consultants, former Army, officers, you have conversations. We've seen these incidents across the country, not just focused on one part. And it would seem that when these stories come out, we seem to be playing catch-up. We start rallying together to maybe go after them or try to rescue the people kidnapped. But within your circles, what do you make of the general security architecture, the security approach in Nigeria as of today?
Thank you very much, Kayode and Ayo, for having me on board. And I salute Nigerians. And my heart really goes to those who have suffered either directly or indirectly in this latest one, especially the railway incident, between Abuja and Kaduna. Well, I'm happy that as it stands, almost every one of us now are involved, that we are getting more conscious, more aware of our security. Because like he said, security is everybody's business. Nobody can claim monopoly of knowledge when it comes to security. And lately, when I even listened to some analysis, I became wow, that yes, it's high time that we all, take the bull by the horn. It's very embarrassing what we are facing right now. I mean, a country, like Nigeria, the most popular country in Black Africa, with all the human and natural resources that we have. And that at this point in time, at this 21st century, we should, be experiencing this. As far as I'm concerned, it's high time that we just really come to face the reality that we have faced.
Is it that we've not faced the reality? I think it's staring us in the face quite clearly.
I don't think we've faced the reality.
As we, you mean government, people, or cross-section?
The cross-section, the government and the people, okay? We should right now start holding our leaders accountable. It is high time we have people honorably resigning their appointments when they cannot deliver. That is the truth. I listened to one of the governors when he made his analysis, and I do buy into that. Because this affects all of us across the spectrum. In fairness to the armed forces, we know the armed forces by number. And of course, we are aware of the resources that we have. We are aware of the amount of money that is being allocated. And the big question is, are these money really channeled towards what they are meant for? So there's need for accountability. Are the forces getting the motivation they really deserve and desire? Okay? We look at a situation where we know, just like, it's a common knowledge that the governor came on here to say we know where those people are. We hear them. So what is left for us to do?
Whose job is it to do the needful?
To do the needful?
Yes.
It behoves on both the government and the people.
The Constitution is clear about whose job it is to protect lives and property.
To protect lives and property.
The Constitution is very clear on that.
Well, excuse me.
No ambiguity.
No, excuse me, Ayo. So we're here. Let's lay it bare. Who does the Constitution, give that responsibility to? And who is in charge of directing?
I asked that question. Maybe I should ask Mr. Abe, because I asked that question against the backdrop of what you said when you said that the security, the work of security, is the responsibility of everyone.
Yes.
And I agree with you to an extent.
Yes.
But Mr. Abe, the Constitution is clear on whose job it is to protect lives and property. And Conor Diary here is saying that it is our mutual responsibility, and we all agree. But someone needs to take the lead, which is the government. It is clear that it is the job of government to protect lives and property. In a situation where we have what we have on our hands, what then do we say?
Well, thank you very much. I think what I want to say first is the situation in our hands. I want to refer to it as what I'll call a security deficit. This country has been in security deficit over the years. Security deficit in terms of capacity, in terms of personnel, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of even citizenry participation in security, and in terms of governmental roles in providing security for the country. Like you said, by law and by the constitution of this country, the federal government has the sole responsibility of ensuring adequate security for the citizenry. But is that even feasible? Is that something that is practicable? I mean, leaving other levels of government out of security provision. And this has led us to somewhat deficit, like I said before. And that is why we are where we are. If you look at it today, we have advocated for this over time. what is the total number of security personnel in this country over the years? And ever since we have been facing these security challenges, there have been cries for increase in personnel, increase in infrastructure, particularly equipment and technology. And another funny thing you will even discover is that you will see people who have no business in security taking responsibility for security issues. If you look at the issue of the Minister of Transportation, he was talking about equipment that he sent memo to the Federal Executive Council. For goodness sake, I read too after his statement that this is a company that has not been tested anywhere. This is equipment that has they claim the technology that has not been known to be tested anywhere. We don't even know the country of manufacture. We don't know whether it has been used elsewhere and things like that. So we have had this over the years, and this is why we have security deficit. If you look at the last administration's security contract, I read in particular of a young man they claim to be from Niger Republic that was given security contract to provide security equipment for this country that cannot be found up to today. I mean, what are we talking about? We are in deficit in everywhere, and so I am not surprised that we are where we are. Because
my apologies. Just one second, Mr. Abu. Just 1 second. When you say we're in security deficit, I'm wondering the basis. Security is about one of the most funded, if not the most funded, in terms of the budget over the years. I mean, it always comes, most of the time it comes tops, at least among the top tiers of the sectors that are most funded in the organization. And, a number of people are still asking the questions. We don't even know how this money is spent. So when you say we are in deficit, is it in terms of funding, resourcing, personnel, equipment, exactly what is the deficit?
Thank you very much. The deficits are, for instance, you provide so much money for security. If there was no change of government in the last administration, do you think we would have known that the money meant for security equipment, arms and ammunition have been spent anyhow? You wouldn't have known. So we are in deficit even in security budget implementation. We are in deficit of providing adequate, technology for our security personnel. We are in deficit of providing enough personnel. Whether we like it or not, this country is at war. It's not only in the south, it's northeast, northwest, north central. In the south, I mean, you know what is going on in the southeast. We know what the policemen are being killed, the soldiers are being killed on a daily basis. Is that not war? In the southwest, for instance, the Yahoo Plus guys, ritual killings are on a daily basis. So we are at war, and when you're at war, what do? There should be mass mobilization in terms of personnel recruitment. There must be mass provision of technology provision. There must be mass. In fact, I expected that by now, especially the kinetic aspect, that we should have even called in some very active retired military personnel that can be of use to this country. Because the way we are going, the bandits or the terrorists, as we call them now, they are on the increase on a daily basis. And we are not
Having identified some of these deficits, would you also say there's a deficit, before I come to Lagos, would you say there's a deficit in intelligence, being an area you're vast in? Would you say there's an intelligence, rather deficit in intelligence?
The area that we are in deficit in intelligence is, for me, is in the area of technology to assist, security operatives and intelligence officers in procuring intelligence. Let me give you a typical example. When we are talking about tracking, for instance, now, how many security formations? I want to use the police as a typical example. Why should there be no tracking equipment at the divisional level, area command level? In most cases, when they have need to track, they come to the headquarters. These things should be at every level because the thing is on the increase. That is deficit. That is the kind of deficit I'm talking about. When let me come back to the Super Cup. When the Super Cup was performing excellent, I mean, Nigerians were praising him. Why do you think they were praising him? Do you think he was performing? Because he had the adequate training and he also had equipment. Why can those equipment and those training not go down the level of the various formations for us to operate? When you say, if you meet an average policeman on the street in an advanced country, everything he needed to know about who you are is with him. It's a question of pressing button. Are we not supposed to be at that level? The kind of forest, we are saying that the people have taken over our forest. Are we not supposed to have technology now that will be reporting the forest to us? We are in this thing for almost how many years now, and we are still where we are. And this is the deficit. This is what I'm talking about. If we do this,
just
intelligence
quickly,
will be available.
Right. Just quickly, I just want to be clear. Pardon me, just to follow up on that, I just want to be clear because, I mean, we have various intelligence agencies. There's DSS, there's even Defense Intelligence, there's National Intelligence Agency. So we're not quite short when it comes to intelligence, agencies or apparatus, as it were, in Nigeria. And you would hear that you have intelligence operatives in every local government area. And I even imagine that there should be more, seeing that we're in this situation. So why is it hard, or how is it hard to still procure intelligence? That's the term usually used, when it would seem we have enough intelligence agencies, we have as much intelligence operatives, and we have this issue on our hands. Is it a problem with local intelligence, connecting that intelligence, apparatus to the people to procure that intelligence? Is that where the problem is as well?
I'll tell you basic things. In intelligence, in intelligence gathering, let me use just two basic. There are human intelligence. In other words, you look for contacts, you look for informants, that are bound everywhere. Okay, and the other one is technology, like I said. Now, let me take a human intelligence. And the objective of terrorism is to frighten the people to a level that they can no longer even cooperate with the government. Right now, it is even difficult to penetrate those organizations. I was in service when Metesine was, ravaged Kaduna, and it did not take us time. Within 2-3 months, they were rooted out. Why? Because it was easy for us to get contacts, even within the organization. And Nigerians are not being frightened to a level that they cannot give information. As it is today, people are afraid. People are not, looking at that aspect. So our best bet mostly is technology. And it's that technology that is in short supply. But lastly, how much? There are some of these operations that you need authorization before you carry it out. Just like we have been saying, we know where they are, we discuss with them. So in fact, it's not intelligence that is in short supply. If I will say, I think it's the willpower to do the needful. Like one of the governors said, if we have to go to the forest, let it be simultaneous across the states that we know that they are. Do we have the personnel? Do we have the resource? Do we have the armament? Do we have the capacity to carry out that simultaneous operation that will deal with these people? You and I know that it's not even feasible now because the men are not there. Those are the kind of things that we are talking about.
Some people, much as the Kaduna train attack was such an outrage, was such a terrible tragedy, some people will talk about how, that has brought some attention to the people who have now been abducted. So the likelihood of them being returned could be far higher than, say, another community, the community where we've just seen the reports before we came to this discussion, somewhere on the outskirts of Kaduna, where people were abducted as well. Some people were killed and some people were abducted. The chances of those people being recovered are very slim. We've seen on a daily basis how people who are abducted are left, their families are left to their own devices in terms of how they recover their own loved ones. And there are questions as to whether or not the state is beginning to give up on kidnappers. So apart from these landmark abductions, such as the one that happened on the train, other kidnappings, it would seem that citizens are left largely, or the families of those who are abducted are left largely to their own devices. If you're able to pay ransom, fine. If you're not able to pay ransom, then your loved one can continue to remain in the hands of the abductors. It looks like that's the sort of helpless situation we found ourselves. Have you come to this conclusion as well, or do you think that there is something that is happening behind the scenes which we are not seeing?
I don't think there is anything happening behind the scene. What is happening is the terrorists or the kidnappers. They have seen our own shortcomings. Shortcomings first everywhere. We don't have the appetite. Look at that part of Kaduna, the last one you're talking about. You don't expect what you don't have. You can't give it out. Ordinarily, with the level of the frequency of attacks in Kaduna, most of these communities by now should have security operatives standing by, not from far area that they can easily respond to threats and things like that. But if they don't have that number of personnel, how many places do you expect them to deploy people? If you look at Kaduna, somebody was listing the various institutions, that are there. Don't forget that after the attack at NDA, they too know, because most of those institutions are training institutions, but they needed to provide, security, for their own institutions. So if government has taken a policy, and I think rightly too, that they are not going to pay ransom. And so if government has no capacity to provide security everywhere for people, and your people are kidnapped, and certainly you would not like to keep your people, your loved ones in their detention, you will certainly find a way of sorting it out. But like I said, Nigeria should believe that we are at war. And if we are at war, we should make sure what is left for us now is massive resources in acquiring everything that we need to acquire: personnel, recruitment, and training immediately, as it is usually done during the war. And then in the area of equipment, somebody said some of these countries may not want to even sell the equipment to us. Let's go to another country. We are not supposed to be tied to one country. So, we should do that faster. It's all these delays over the years that have brought us where we are. And we should try as much as possible to avoid bureaucracy in the current situation that we find ourselves.
I'd like Conor Diary to also weigh in on this discussion in terms of the helplessness that we found ourselves. It is very worrisome indeed. Reading the top top of the nameplate of the Abuja Inquirer this morning, and the story saying that the abductors who had taken an Abuja chief were telling his family members to sell his house so that he could raise the 20 million naira or so that they had demanded to release him. People are selling all that they have when they're kidnapped. And I know that the state continues to say, security agencies continue to say that people shouldn't give ransom to kidnappers because it continues to fuel it. But when you look at the capacity that our state apparatus have exhibited in terms of being able to rescue these people back, it leaves a lot to be desired. Families look like they're left with no other option than to submit to the will of these abductors. Is it a trend that worries you?
Thank you, Mark. Honestly, it is most worrisome. I really don't understand, because sometimes if you go and make this report, you end up even regretting. So what most people do, it happens on a daily basis. Even here in Lagos, there's nowhere that is free. People just arrange and they pay the ransom. And that shouldn't be at all. That shouldn't be. Just like Mr. Abu said, there is a deficit in our intelligence. In all facets of our intelligence, there is a deficit. Because it's common knowledge. We know the numbers. They are not just there. When you look on the streets, at least within 200-300 meters, you should see a law enforcement agent there, such that if you are in danger, it gives you that first psychological relief, you know. But when you look around, there's no one in sight. And even sometimes when you make calls, someone sits down at the desk there asking you some very, very, very unreasonable question when you are in distress. I mean, that shouldn't be. So as far as I'm concerned, we know where these people are. You hear them. They should be rooted out. There should be a coordinated approach to it. It's not a situation whereby we take it in isolation. You have crisis in Kaduna, you are facing Kaduna. By the time you root out these people from Kaduna, they have moved to Plateau. By the time you chase them to Plateau, they have moved, you know, to Zamfara or Nasarawa or another neighborhood. So there should be, you know, what I would call a coordinated approach, so that there will be effective.
Okay, Conor Diary, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts. We will focus a little more on the solutions when we come back from this break. I know you're talking about how you know, the state should do something about it, but we'll ask what citizens on their own part can do as well. In just a moment, please stay with us.
We are in the country today. It's not a situation where one man will say, yes, I have the solution, unless we are deceiving ourselves. And I believe that we need to sit down collectively, look at the situation. A situation where the train, you are not safe on the road. You are not safe in the train. You are not safe at the airport. Then what remains? And that is a very, very serious situation. All right-thinking Nigerians must know that we have a situation that has overwhelmed the present administration. But we should not allow that situation to overwhelm Nigeria.
We're still talking security here on Sunrise Daily, and Conor Diary, a former army officer, and Mr. Adam Zabu, former assistant director of internal security at the DSS, our guests this morning. Just before we went on break, we're talking about intervening in cases of kidnapping, whether citizens are on their own and, you know, whether there's nothing we can do about the helplessness that citizens currently feel. So, Conor Diary, you're talking about how we need to undertake a simultaneous, military operation, it would seem, or security operation, if you like, around the state of the Northwest to be able to do something about this kidnappers. I know that the governor of the state, Governor Nasir El-Rufai, as governor of Kaduna State, has spoken severally about, carrying out such a simultaneous attack. And I know that before now, I think in 2016, 2017, he talked about an operation that was highly successful around the forests of Kaduna, bordering Zamfara, bordering a number of northwestern states. He did say that there was that collaboration there and lamented the fact that that collaboration seems to be on the back foot now. But there are questions, because I'm wondering, because he said that the governors were able to muster the resources to fund the military to carry out such an operation. So I wonder, is it that there's no fund? Is it that there are no funds? Because over and over again, the president has given his directive to the military chiefs. And I imagine that if the president has given the directive and it's a matter of funding, it should be that, they could present that to him and carry out this operation, especially if there is proof that having carried out such an operation in the past was able to solve a particular problem. Why is it that we're unable to, whether or not with the funding of the governors, carry out such an operation again?
Well, Mokwe, it's a big puzzle because as we speak, the armed forces are being funded, and with all the funds, what are we seeing? The problem, as far as I'm concerned, is hydra-headed. It's hydra-headed because insecurity cuts across. When the funds don't really reach or are not used for what they are meant for. And of course, that brings us to the issue of corruption. Because when there's so much corruption, there's lack of accountability. We found ourselves in a situation whereby people just help themselves and they get away with it. Hence, you now have issues of cultism again. You now have issues of the young ones, everybody looking to how to get rich quick. Values are lost. Yes, there's need for us, like we've always said on this platform, that, look, who is afraid of state policing? It's high time we stop playing the ostrich. Let's have state police, for crying out loud. As far as I'm concerned, the reason against state police is more of politics than reality. But Nigeria, we are crying now, begging for the soul of this country to be salvaged in the hands of the wicked ones. So why can't we just have state police? Because this, our problem is really is localized.
If you had the opportunity, I mean, you have talked about this monster being a hydra-headed monster. Which one of the heads will you attack? And I can see it as you're presenting the issues, that it just keeps expanding and looks really complex. But which one of the levels would you tackle first? Or which one of the heads will you tackle first?
I said in my opening remark here that, look, it's high time we have leaders now being honorable enough to resign when they cannot perform. And if they refuse to resign, they should be shown the way out. For crying out loud, Nigeria lost to Ghana in a football match, just a football match. And you saw the way the people reacted. So why can't the people go out and react against people who are retrogressing our progress in this country? Some people don't really have a business, just like Mr. Abu said. Some people don't even have a business about security. But when it comes to dishing out the money, managing the money, it comes to their table. That shouldn't be it. That shouldn't be it at all.
So you seem to have put this failure at the table of management at the top level, and you think there should be repercussions for
Absolutely.
That. So you talked about simultaneous bombardment, and
Yeah.
I just want to take you up on that before I take you to Mr. Abu.
Yeah.
Do we know for a fact that these attacks across states, whether in the northwest, north central, northeast, and even the parts of the south, are related? Because, I mean, I think you talked about when they are attacked in one place, they move to another place, keep being displaced. Are they really related? So we have a Kaduna Abuja train attack. We've had a killing in Plateau State just over the weekend. We've had attacks as well in Niger and other states. Are they indeed related? Because it's important to delineate so we know what we're dealing with here.
I believe they are related. These people work in cells, and they are coordinated. They are coordinated. And of course, we know they have foreign support too. So what stops us? I give you an example. Look at the Kaduna incident. They've had intelligence about it. But just because of selfish personal interest, because of greed, nothing was done. Nothing was done. And as I speak with you...
On the path of who, please?
On the
selfishness, the greed, on the path of who?
On the part of the agents or agencies that are responsible for the management of, for example, for the Nigerian railways. Right from the top to the bottom, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry?
How do you mean?
Kayode, you've had people come over the national television to talk about, you know, they're getting information, and then, you know, box shifting, blaming one, you know, body or the other. That shouldn't be it. What stops us, even these trains that we have, what stops us from ordering trains, you know, that have technology, security equipment? I mean, that's the least you can do. All these trains should have CCTV cameras embedded in them.
Well, I think the NRCMD spoke about CCTVs in the train, and he said that they will go download it. But I think the challenge was on the rail tracks itself.
Even the rail tracks, what stops us from having the kind of train that we have like sweepers?
It goes back to the issue we raised earlier with
Yes.
you and Mr. Abu about the failure of intelligence or a lack of intelligence, for which reason we also asked the question whether or not we had a deficit, excuse me, in terms of intelligence. Mr. Abu, it's only when things like this happen that we raise all the issues. And I'll be honest with you, it gets really frustrating for many Nigerians. Earlier, we saw a report where in Kaduna State, people are living in perpetual fear because they go into their homes to abduct them, to pick them. And it's not only in Kaduna State that this is happening. You also saw, and of course my colleague Markwe re-emphasized it the other time, talking about a man that was abducted in Abuja. And so it is not because we don't know that these things are happening or will happen. So what have we been failing to do? The scare on the front pages of the papers is also that, look, these things may not end unless we do some things. We shouldn't wait for another tragedy before we get ahead of the issues. So what are we failing to do that's making all of these things happen?
Thank you very much for this particular question. I've been longing for it. We have failed to do many things in the past and even now. In 2012, IIPS organized an annual conference. We call it ISCA. I was the lead speaker. And in that conference, I told them from my experience that in the first place, funding of national security agencies should not be left for the federal government alone. That the National Assemblies will look at it and provide a law that will appropriate fundings and provision of infrastructure across the 3 tiers of government. And I gave a typical example. If a local government chairman gives the DPO 50,000 naira to repair or buy fuel for an operational vehicle, he thinks he's doing him favor. I mean, because there is no statutory provision for him to do so. And when people are talking about the governors have a security vote and all the like, how much is the security vote? Maybe about 1 billion and so on and so forth. That is not up to what we are talking about. Over the years, we have not been doing what we are supposed to be doing in the area of funding. And I told you before that all the security, you talked about a simultaneous operation across maybe the northeast, northwest. What do you use in that simultaneous operation? Is it not personnel? Will you move all the security personnel from other parts of the country? And when you want to carry out this kind of operation, like what they did when they gave amnesty to these South agitators that time, militants, and I told them that it was a faulty, policy. And they said, why? I said, how do you ever believe that they will give you all the arms that they have? And if we are going to do that, why will it not be simultaneous? So if we are going to carry out this kind of operation, it is not only the areas that we have current situation, even other areas, because if you start there, they will even move into those places. And whether you like it or not, even the operation that took place in Zamfara, they would have moved into other states southward, whether we like it or not, or other part of the north central that they were not before. So we must agree to do the right thing. It's not a question when there's an attack, we begin to run here, hold meetings and things like that.
But Mr. Abu, can we get ahead of them? Take a look at these 2 quotes. Let's start with this one by a cleric, Pastor Adeboye, who is asking the question. For so many things on my mind, most especially the attacks on Kaduna. Why Kaduna? Who is trying to isolate Kaduna and why? And after Kaduna, which state is next? That's an intelligence information, for instance. But it would seem like Mr. Ejiofor, your former colleague, was responding to him when he says, taking Kaduna, where we have several military formations, is strategic to them. If they can overrun Kaduna and environs and other areas that do not have military installations like Kaduna become an easy ride for them. This, it would seem like, and of course we know the things that have happened, the NDA and a number of other institutions, like that are in Kaduna. So it is not because we do not have capacity in Kaduna State, for instance. It's just because we haven't done some things that ought to be done with the military infrastructure that is in Kaduna State. Do we need to wait for body language to do the needful and protect ourselves?
Thank you very much. Let me go straight to their responses. Why Kaduna? In the first place, why Kaduna? Don't forget that it's this same Kaduna that the governor before told Nigerians that he settled some bandits so that they will not operate again. It's this same Kaduna that the same governor turned back to say that he's no more paying ransom to anybody and they should go to the forest to kill them. It's this same Kaduna state that the bandits, the terrorists, have been attacking over the years without any reasonable, notable response, to neutralize them. I asked myself one day that this group always attacking. Are they not somewhere? Are they not moving from somewhere? And don't forget that if they are moving from somewhere, it is not the fighting forces that will infiltrate them in that somewhere. The only thing that can infiltrate them is the technology. Do we have that technology? Do they have it? Like I said, our forest management that is still manual, is that supposed to be under the current security challenges? But whether or not we like that, and don't forget that these security agencies will not come out to tell you that these are the things we like. Nobody does that anyway. I have not heard the CIA telling the American government that we don't have this, we don't have that, or you are not behaving this, we are not behaving that. It's we that are outside that are supposed to be saying, and that should be the truth of the situation. And let me also add this. for those that are always attacking, the security forces, they are not doing this, they are not doing that. For me, under the circumstances they find themselves, they are doing the best they can afford to do. Because it's their life that's sick. Don't forget that they are the first, in fact, they bear the brunt of the attacks even more than the people. So if we want to face this situation as it is, and I've been saying it, let us believe we are at war. In fact, if possible, declare the state of emergency, and I think it's possible, so that we can commit resources in terms of personnel, in terms of equipment, and in terms of the citizenry support for us to look at another one that is coming. Right now, Nigerians don't believe the damage that the cybercrime is causing to the citizenry and even the government. And in fact, our reputation at the international community, we are not looking at it now until it becomes a thing that we can no longer deal with.
Well, Mr. Abu, indeed, an important point you made about the cyber crimes angle of the security conversation. But I find it quite puzzling when you said that it is not those agencies that would ask for what they need, that it's people outside that would ask for it. If I got you correctly, then what's the point? Are they there to make the government feel good?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I mean, they make their request, but they cannot come out to you and say, this is the request we have made. They make their requests, and if their requests are not met, they will not come on the media like this and say our requests are not met. Just like I said, why is it that every police division is not having tracking device? So that we can respond immediately if there is kidnapping, if there is an attack. Why are they not having a tracking device?
Okay.
For instance, why are we not having technology, GPS-based? I remember, even if we are talking about this attack, there are predator drones everywhere in the world. Has it not come to a level that we should acquire them? Because
okay, let's find out what Conor Diary thinks about this. Right, Mr. Abu, just a moment. Let's find out what Conor Diary thinks about it. Is this problem a problem of technology, acquiring, and all that? Do you agree that that's the challenge we have here?
I kind of want to beg to to differ a little bit from what Mr. Abu has postulated or presented here, because as far as I'm concerned, monies are budgeted and given to these various agencies, the police, the military, and even these days you find individuals having drones.
Children sometimes.
Yeah, even kids, they have drones. So what stops, the parastatals or the agencies from acquiring these things, okay? And let me just quickly sound a note of warning here. We have to be very, very careful, because we've said it here at times without number. The railway, a lot of billions of dollars have been invested in these things. A lot of this money are loans that, whether we like it or not, we have started paying back. Okay? So, the other time, the rail lines were attacked. Even some foreigners were found amongst the people who I think it was on I think it was on the Tape axis where they removed those rail lines. Okay? That wasn't an attack on the railway itself, but now we have an attack on the railway, and we should expect more of these things happening. And then the next target is the airport. We shouldn't just sit back. A lot of our airports are porous, so there's need for us right now to step up. The federal government should step up.
I find it puzzling, Colonel, to think that a group somewhere, either domiciled here or elsewhere, they have operations here, can make the government of Nigeria at different levels seem to be running around in circles. They hit and it seems to disappear into thin air. And I don't know. I know there are things to do before an attack, during an attack, and after the attack. But are we looking at this well? Who is the greatest beneficiary, or who will be the greatest beneficiary of all this chaos? Have we been able to answer that question?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer in this circumstance. But one thing I know is that there are people, there are saboteurs, even within the government itself. Okay? So there's need to fish out these fifth columnists and deal with them.
I'm sorry, Conor Diary. Is that to say that this information because I have implicit confidence in I've said this countless times. I have implicit confidence in Nigeria's intelligence community. I don't believe that with the resources committed to training them, to preparing them for the jobs that are on their hands, as Mr. Abu has said, I don't believe, as Kayode also postulated, that we can be overrun without someone knowing about it. So this information that you're giving about, some saboteurs within government, is it that this information is not known to government? Is it that the head of state, the president, or the governors in each of these states don't know each of these people, and they can't send DSS officials to pick them up and call them what Pastor Ladi Thompson calls persons of interest?
Listen, Ayo, mark my words. This country has invested so much in the training of personnel, and we have some of the best heads in the military and in the police forces.
So what is holding us from deploying them to do the needful?
I want to believe that maybe the willpower is not there.
On whose part now?
Maybe on the part of the government. Because we really need to look inwards and reappraise our situation.
I'm sorry, Colonel and Mr. Abu. Maybe I'm just speaking like a layman who doesn't know anything. The laws are clear what the job of the military is. The law is clear, Mr. Abu, what the job of the DSS is. The job is clear, the law is clear, what the job of the police is. In fact, the law says that the primary job of the police is to prevent crime, not to fight crime.
Ayo, listen here. What are we talking about? Let's have a situation whereby there's autonomy for even the local government. Let's have a situation whereby we have a state police, we have the local police, such that the funds that are meant for these people reach them to be able to perform their duties. It's not a situation whereby you start giving people handouts. And when you give that man handout, that man believes, just like Abu said, you are doing him a favor, which shouldn't be at all. And first, he owes some loyalty to you, whether you are doing the right thing or not.
Colonel, this state police conversation, and I know it can take days to just talk about, because it will seem the governors want state police. It will seem the president doesn't want state police. But don't forget that the National Assembly is made up of representatives from states, and they can champion this cause and say, well, our people, it will seem, want state police. Let us pass it through. And maybe if they don't get the assent of the president, they can do what the Constitution says they can do to get that to work. So maybe that speaks to the willpower, because we've been on this conversation for more 10 years, state police or not, going back and forth. Does this speak to the willpower, political willpower, or do we just say one thing and mean another thing?
Well, I think sometimes we say one thing and mean another thing, because we just are not facing the reality. We are playing the ostrich, and you know the way the ostrich plays. It's game. Everything is outside. So it's high time. Because a lot of things now borders around consensus and what have you.
It's interesting that term comes up. It reminds me of the political dealings we've had in recent times, which some have said may have distracted from the security conversation. But let me take this to Mr. Abu. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, because we've had this conversation on security almost every day, day in, day out. Solutions are proffered. Security consultants sometimes tell you, we have said enough. I wonder, do you think that we're at a point where maybe it looks like we're coming to accept these insecurity, situations as our new norm, where we're just trying to live with it rather than get rid of it?
We must, let me go straight. We must never accept that this is a new norm. I mean, how can one accept when farmers cannot go to the farm, you cannot do business, sometimes the whole town is shut down. Look at that community in Kaduna. Will anything be going on there? It's not something for us to accept, but it's something for those, to do, who are supposed to do what they are supposed to do so that we can have adequate security. There is no shortcut now that we are at war and we should face that war to fight it. And like I said before, and I want to repeat it, that first and foremost, let us begin to do what we are supposed to do when a nation is at war. Mass recruitment, provision of adequate resources for security forces, and then my colleague he said something about he believes that our government is giving them enough money to buy this, to buy that. If you have given if you think if government are giving them that kind of money and they are not buying them, government would have complained. Government would have found a way of reacting. So I want to believe that they don't have the adequate resources. It is time for us to give them adequate resources, to provide adequate resources. And then do enough of, let us have, let us be strategic.
Okay, Mr. Abu, in terms of the things that you have raised just now, we need to wrap up in the next 60 seconds or thereabout. Do you see, excuse me, do you see an end in sight to insecurity in this country within the shortest possible time? If you do, within how many days, weeks, months, or years from now?
In the next 1 year, if we do the needful, recruit enough personnel, give them adequate training, provide adequate resources, especially technology, and then the citizenry should know that this is war, and all of us should fight it together. If you look at the successes recorded in the Northeast, it is as a result of the support of the civilian, JTF. Various communities should have their civilian JTF to support the security forces in this war that we are in. If we don't do this, honestly, it might take longer, but within a year, we can make a great impact that people can go to farm. And apart from this, again, there must be policy of providing. You see the level of the economy, the political leadership.
We need to wrap up now, Mr. Abu. We need to wrap up. I know that the passion is very high on that one. Same question, Mr. Conor Diary, to you. Do you see an end in sight within the shortest possible time, and under what circumstance? 30 seconds.
Well, for me, not in the shortest possible time. I think it has to be a long-term thing. But what we need to do immediately, we need to focus on awareness. There should be intensive awareness. Okay? Like I said, sometimes when we have this issue...
Awareness by whom to whom?
By the government. By the government and the people. For example, when we had the BRT issue here, where the poor girl was murdered, in all the buses, it should be written boldly, okay? Emergency numbers to contact, okay? At all bus stops, you should have it displayed, emergency numbers to contact. And then, of course, we should have monitoring units, real-life monitoring rooms. They call them control rooms.
Or situation rooms.
Yes, situation rooms. Okay. And then real-time recording. And even here, all the various media houses, even here in channels, you should have a control room monitoring some of this.
Well, Conor Diary, clearly that's another sphere that we need to explore. What should be done before and even during the attack? Because some of these emergency numbers, you don't even know them. You have to dial the 0803, 11 digits, when you can actually have 3 digits. But we'd like to thank you so much for your interventions. Colonel Diary, former Army officer, as well as Mr. Adams Abu, former Assistant Director, Internal Security at the DSS, a fellow International Institute of Professional Security and Security and Intelligence Consultant. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, as they have said, we can't give up on these issues, and that's exactly what we'll do when we return in a moment. So please stay with us.
We're still talking security here on Sunrise Daily, and we do know that there are many parts of our country that are challenged on this issue of security. We've just spoken to experts on the field, but what about those who have some responsibility to, help tackle the situation? This morning, we're speaking with Emmanuel Umar, who is the Commissioner of Local Government Affairs. Beg your pardon. He's Commissioner for Local Government, Chieftaincy Affairs and Internal Security. Mr. Omar, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
I wish I was speaking with you on something totally different.
Yeah.
But security is what we have been served, and that's what we have to deal with. Some time ago, we were able to have a conversation with the Secretary to the Government of your state, yes, in Niger State. Yeah. But shortly after he left, there were other incidences that came up. So it does look like it's not exactly been, it's not a huru yet in Niger State. The situation is still, quite challenging. And we saw that horrible tragedy that happened in a village, I think in Muya local government area, where we understand that terrorists had attacked a village. The villagers knew about it. They were running away from the terrorists. They saw a boat. One of the ways they could get away was to get into a boat. The boat was not serviceable. They knew that boat was a bad boat, but the terrorists wouldn't give up. So they kept chasing these villagers, who eventually got into the boat and tried to see if they could escape to the next village. And then the boat, of course, capsized. And at the last time, they were still talking about pulling bodies out of the river as a result of that tragedy. It was a literal situation of people being caught between the devil
and the deep blue sea.
And the deep blue sea.
Well, like you rightly said, the security situation is still very challenging, especially with the spike of attacks, the recent attacks that happened. However, I know that some of the feedbacks we're getting from the communities of recent, there has been great security operations going on. I just pray that we'll be able to sustain this high level of operations. Now, back to the incident that you mentioned about, I think it was in Ashata community in Muya local government, where there was movement of bandits, terrorists were moving, and they breached into that community, and people again trying to run to safety. And the only available means that they had then was to cross over the river, and unfortunately that incident happened. Our hearts and prayers are with the family of the deceased.
Do you know how many people lost their lives in that incident?
As at the time of the incident, the report we received was about 8 bodies were recovered. Now, sometimes you get different reports, but the Marine Police were there, local government officials were there, state emergency management agencies too were there, and also the community people who sent the reports to my office. It was 8 bodies that were able to recover. Now, no one can tell you the exact numbers of people who were on the board, except, after the incident, you start doing head counts, accountability, and so. But totally, there initially was about 12 persons were still missing, unaccounted for. But we've been able to get 8 bodies out, and we've spoken about that earlier. Now, talking about, again, you mentioned about also the security challenges that happened within that same week. It's disheartening, it's sad, and again, we begin to see what is even more troublesome is the coordinated attacks that is being carried out from those border states of Niger, Kaduna, Zamfara, Kebbi, Katsina, we see just within that those areas. So, but again, like I said, with the recent information we are receiving these few days, and also the coordinated operations that have been carried out by our armed forces, our police, and other unconventional security agencies, we're beginning to get good feedback.
Mm. Well, I'd like to be optimistic, but, I'd like to also talk about, diagnosing the problem.
Yes.
Niger State had been calm before now.
Very,
Even
very
though
peaceful.
some people said that, it was the calm of the graveyard. It was only a matter of time. If all of that war was happening in the northeast and spreading to the northwest, it was anything to go by, that calmness was, was a mirage of some sort. And it would seem that it's beginning to unravel, very sadly so. I'm just wondering, do we understand, as we speak, what the motive of those who have put Niger State under siege? What exactly is it? I mean, what do they want?
Okay, glad you said Niger State used to be very calm. It's one of the sleepy communities you have in Nigeria. I remember growing up in Niger, on the streets, we moved freely and people traveled the length and breadth of the state. Now, the incidents that started happening, it started like herders, farmers' crisis, and it's snowballed now to a large-scale act of terrorism, criminality, and whatnot. And a large part of that, because of Niger sharing border with states that have had one degree or the other challenges of security, like the Zamfara, the Kaduna, the Katsina, you discover that there is a thoroughfare. Now, this move from these communities that we share border with, get into Niger, and because there are large forest span of land and forest reservation, we have over 90 forest reservation in Niger State. And of course, Niger by landmass is more than the entire southeast. So now these terrorists take advantage of the terrain. And because our communities are spatial, you travel kilometers before you find a community. And the reason why people do that is because largely our people are farmers. So they take advantage of that. And that's why you begin to see all those activities going on. But again, the state governor has been very, very, very proactive. If you remember, he was the first to come out to say that, look, in my state, we have the footprints of the elements of terrorists. Boko Haram, he made mention about 2 years ago. And it's close to FCT. But then people thought he was an alarmist. And because we understood what was going on in the state, and we were putting on our mechanism to be sure that we'll be able to contain and mitigate against those challenges. So those are the things, again, that, instigate all this crisis.
You know why I ask? I mean, some people say it's not clear what they're trying to do, but why I ask is this: Niger State has land.
Correct.
I mean, you have 10% of the
total
entire
country
land that Nigeria has is domiciled in Niger State.
Correct.
So if these terrorists were looking for a land to settle, without even being noticed, it is very possible that they could have found land within Niger State and formed an entire community by themselves.
Correct.
But in recent times, they've taken to terrorizing these villages. We've seen entire villages destroyed. We've seen those who have been, displaced. So one has to ask, what exactly is it? Just to wreak terror? To what end?
It's criminal.
Is it to take over the villages?
Act of criminality. It's purely an act of criminality, taking advantage of our.
But even criminals have a motive. So armed robbers, when they rob you, they want, they want economic advantage. So Boko Haram, we know that they are an ideological group that they want to.
So you begin to see that it's purely because of. Let me just make it very clear. You understand? These acts of terrorism and criminality is purely because of, it's an enterprise, economic enterprise.
Okay.
Today, just imagine, I hate to use, because of stereotyping, I don't want to use a particular ethnicity towards that, where you have an individual who in a whole year could hardly have 200,000 naira. Then today, he can kidnap someone, take him hostage, and get 2 million naira. How do you expect him to, when he has the instrument of terror in his hands? So it's purely criminality. In fact, in some communities, and I keep saying this, in some communities, you have money in the hands of criminals, those bandits, those terrorists, than even in the formal sector. I know of a local government that in the entire of the bank in the local government, you don't have 10 million naira. But the terrorists that terrorize those axes have collected over 40 million naira from individuals. and also things that they've cattled away with. How do you expect that to stop? So it's purely an enterprise now. People, this group of criminals taking advantage of a system and cashing out of it. And that is just what is happening. But again, like I said, we're beginning to see an increase. I'm sure you've been following up events in Niger State, how God has been giving us victory. And it is because we had to change our strategy. His Excellency the Governor was very, very strong about it, that we must not give a foot in to any criminal in the state. And with his support to the law enforcement agencies, with the things we've done, the equipment, the vehicles, everything that he has brought on the table, we've been seeing successes from our law enforcement agency.
Well, you're in charge of local government, chieftaincy affairs and internal security.
Correct.
I think the two that concern us this morning, I'm really concerned about is local government. We've talked about, and then there's plenty of talk around how that tier of government is almost non-existent. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this breakdown of law and order. You've talked about how the villages and the communities in Niger are well spaced apart, and how that is a challenge when it comes to this issue of security, because the terrorists are taking advantage of it. So has there been any plan to revitalize the local governments to ensure that they're able to do their work as that third tier of government?
For sure. If you've been, like I said, if you've been following events in Niger State, you will realize that His Excellency the Governor has been very, very specific, because he sees the local government, like you rightly said, as a tier of government, and he granted, before even the federal government started talking about the autonomy, we started practicing that. And that's why you find out that we brought this multidimensional involvement and engagement in even the security issues. So the local government runs her own show, you understand, and also the development projects and stuff like that that we take within that tier of government, and very, very effective. And we've also involved, I thought you mentioned about the traditional institution, because it's still part of the local government. Also the engagement of our traditional institution. Now looking at bringing, that's why his governor in his own wisdom decided to bring security embedded into that ministry together. And so they have their own freedom of engagement, and they are fully engaged in whatever happens in that local level of government.
What results have we really seen? I mean, if this attack I talked about still happened just last week, can we really say that this is a question? I mean, we cannot exactly say it's proactivity. The proactive only happens when you anticipate something. When after it has happened and then you do it afterwards, that's certainly not proactivity.
Okay. Now, you have to also understand that how fluid the entire security situation is. Prior to this time, prior to now that we're talking, if you've been following events, you will see how our community engagement, the resilience from community people, how there was a breach for like 3, 4, 5 days, these bandits accessing into our community rose to the occasion. How we will be able to neutralize a large number of these bandits. We recovered some of the cattle that were rusted, even their weaponry, and motorcycles. Over 200 were neutralized in Niger at a particular time. And as yesterday, community, with the help of our unconventional security, which we term as the vigilante, the police, the army, were also able to resist and also not only repel, but also neutralize some of the bandits that access our community. So there are some proactive things that have been done. There are engagement that we put with local community people based on our engagement. Recently, His Excellency signed the bill to reorganize our vigilante sector. And this vigilante, which is our unconventional security measures in the state, the community people are the ones involved in doing that. So there are successes that have been recorded. You know,
so essentially what you're saying is that you have empowered the communities to be able to respond to this security.
Absolutely. building resilience among the community.
It will mean that the communities, I mean, these vigilante groups will bear arms.
Oh, sure, our communities, yeah, we have a law backing that, but they operate under the Nigerian police force.
Okay.
Yes.
That is a very complicated way of looking at it.
Oh, no. So if you understand, arms in this country are prohibited items. And they carry what we call the allowed caliber of weapon. But again, they are under the Nigerian police force. They report to their divisions. It is the divisions that coordinated the operations. And so there is a law backing that in the state. And it is the proactiveness of the governor that brought us that, that law to be. So we have that, and it is community-based because it's only someone from the community that can be able to protect his community. And besides that, we have a fantastic way of getting information. Community let us know XYZ, we've seen bandits, they're operating in XYZ, they are doing this and that. We also brought into a policy where if you have any information about anyone, an informant or a bandit, you report to government and there is a reward for that. We call it reward for justice. So all these are things that the government has put in place. Okay.
So I'm wondering, do you pay this, is there an allowance for the vigilante?
Oh yeah, they get stipends. Because it's a voluntary work, it's part of our voluntary policing strategy, so they get a stipend for that. Of course, you can't put someone on a work without a stipend.
How much is your stipend? I know it's a stipend. It's a stipend.
It's a stipend. I would prefer it just for some obvious reasons. Yeah.
I'm just, anyways, I'm just asking that because, as you said,
we can't pay them for their service.
Yes.
You understand? And it's just getting their buy-in into this. And most of them are even willing to do this because they feel it's an ownership of protecting their community. And they take pride in it.
So
but again,
why I asked that question is this. I know that there have been questions, I mean, there have been national conversations on state policing.
Correct.
This recently started again, constitutional amendment process. It was seen that state policing was not one of the things that was going to be considered. We do not know if there will be any inclusion along the way. But states like yours have since found that it doesn't make any sense to rely on the federal police for security in your state. Maybe as a general operating, reporting unit, but in terms of operations on the ground, you have since found that it was wiser to go down the vigilante route, and that if you had state police, perhaps, it might have been wiser for you to, deploy that there. I'm just trying to imagine, because it's a very fine line. 1 minute, they're vigilante. The next minute, they could be the people who you have a problem with. So is there a way to actually standardize what we currently have? That's looking ahead now, being proactive and looking ahead to ensure that we'll finance, and that's why I ask how much they're currently receiving as stipend. Will finance be one of the things that would constrain your effort in that regard?
Okay, well, it's important to just put it very clear that we are not saying that it's not wiser to depend on the national police because they have their role. But again, if you know Niger, like you said, Niger occupies like 10% of the entire landmass of the nation. The entire Niger state, the police deployment in the entire Niger state are not up to 5,000. Now, we're talking about a state that has between just less than 50 divisions. This is a state that it's bigger than the entire Southeast. So if in the entire Southeast that we have about 5 states, or thereabout, you have 5 commissioners of police, you have 5 directors of SSS, you have probably 5 brigade commanders. Now in Niger, it's only 1 that you have. It's under-policed. So now coming about the vigilante is to bridge the gap. Now I know there is a conversation about state police, and there are both the for and against, and people are entitled to their own opinion. However, we've seen in our own state that bringing this unconventional security architecture, adding that voluntary policing sector into our entire security architecture, it's helping out. We are getting results. In some communities, you find out that the entire police, I know of a community that was attacked recently, the entire police, there were no more than 5. Now, when you have the vigilante, they help. But again, it comes with its own challenges. Agreed. But that's why I started by saying that we are reorganizing it. We've reorganized it towards getting the right people for the right job. And I think we're making headway out of it.
Well, it wasn't quite the question I was asking, but
please go ahead.
Let me take this to Lagos, as I understand that my colleagues have questions for you. Gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Let me just follow up on this talk about just how many policemen you have in the state. I know the Governor Bello, has spoken about this quite a number of times. In fact, the last time was 4,000. So if you say below 5,000, maybe there's been some addition. And I know maybe you have made requests for more. What exactly is holding whoever should act back on ensuring that Niger State has enough policemen? I hear it's meant to be 14,000. I'm not quite sure, but what is holding that back?
Well, it's for the leadership of the Nigerian police force to be able to explain. I know they too have their own challenges about manpower, and I also you said 14,000. I doubt if it is up to 14,000. 14,000 is quite a lot number of strength there. But again, like I said, it is up to the states and the Nigerian police force. I know they have their own challenges, but we desire to have more additional security forces in the state. We're beginning to see increased number of security men, but again, in as much as we know it is not possible to have boots on the ground everywhere, we need additional law enforcement agencies in the state.
Okay, so 2 questions because of our time. One, this attack on Shaitu village in Munya local government area. Have you been able to arrest those responsible? That attack happened days ago last week.
Not to my knowledge, but I know that as we speak now, there has been security operation going on in that local government and some other local governments that share border with Munya local government. And I know our law enforcement have been making, like I said, some successes. It's the armed forces, which involve the Nigerian Air Force, the Army, the police, civil defense, and the DSS. They've been doing their best to ensure that those who breach our security, those who attack our communities, are brought to book. That I know. And the feedback I got yesterday in some of those communities is very impressive. Now, again, I'm not saying that we've been able to resolve all those security challenges, but again, there are remarkable successes that we've recorded.
Just a quick one, Mr. Umar. There's some question that Mark asked earlier, and something that you also said also raised this on my mind, and that's talking about community engagement. You said earlier that, someone who was having difficulty raising money and all of a sudden did a little kidnapping, got 2 million naira. And then Mark was asking the question around how much do you pay these guys, and you said that, they get stipends. So for me, that raises a flag. And I'm just wondering the level of community engagement that will help you in Niger State get security information, intelligence information, that in the event that any of the operatives you have on ground, these volunteers that you have on ground, is compromised, what's the mechanism to report to government in order for the situation not to get worse?
Okay. So, like I started by saying that we did a reorganization of the entire security architecture, including the vigilante. Now, again, yes, it's possible for compromises. However, most of our vigilante went through selection processes, and these selection processes are from the district level from ward level to the district level to the state level, and these are people who the communities know. We've had cases where some vigilante were reported that they were seen or involved in one crime or the other, and the law took its course on them. So it's not the vigilante who are who are voluntarily are not doing that because of the money that they get. They are doing that because of ownership of their community. They feel they own this community and they will not allow this bandit to change their lifestyle. And to be honest, we've seen commitment. Those are the places where we even get inspiration. We are more motivated to do more in our fight against insurgency in the state. So the community people understand it, their role, and they are not doing it because of the money, but because they just want to make their communities safe. But again, like I said, we give them stipends. We also take care of their basic needs. You can't send someone for operation without providing him the tools that he needs for the operation. So we're doing that. Money is not what they are putting in front of them, but the commitment to their community.
Can I ask what the markers for success are? How will the Niger State government rate itself as being successful with the measures that it's put in place?
First is, now there are certain communities that we know that they've been consistent attack in those communities. As of today, because of the measures that we've put in place, there is a scale down in those attacks in those communities. We've also been able to arrest large number of informants. Besides that, our law enforcement in their operations have been able to neutralize a lot of them. And we've taken away some of their equipment, some of the weapons that they use. So those are part of our success stories. We've built confidence in our community people to come out to say that, look, we are partners in this. And if you've been following Niger very well, you will discover that the past, that before now, the attacks were both the southern part and the northern part. But gradually now, it's now moved towards the southern parts, towards borders that we have with some few other states. So those are the things we are looking into. But again, like I said, we are not out of the woods yet, but we will keep to do, we are willing and ready and available to do more. And some of the this successes is credited to the commitments we've seen in our law enforcement agencies, our military, our police, the commitment we've also seen in His Excellency the Governor providing the tools that we need. He purchased over 350-something vehicles to support these operations. Over 2,000 motorcycles. Now, you see how heavily, I'm not talking about other equipments that we purchased for the law enforcement, both the technical support, the work we do for the operatives. So all these are things we put in place.
Well, we certainly will keep our eyes on Niger State. Please. And we'll ensure that we hold you to your word. I do not know, when I asked for a success marker, what I wanted was what the target was. But you've talked about the progress that you've made, which we'll have to make do with for now. And hopefully you'll be back to update us in terms of, what exactly is happening in the state. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Mr. Emmanuel Umar is Commissioner, Ministry of Local Government, Chieftaincy Affairs and Internal Security.
Thank you very much. And it's important to just say this, that we all are in this together. Indeed. And we want to thank you very much for all the support we're receiving. And these are common criminals, and it's a fight for all of us. So by God's grace, very soon this thing will be the thing of the past. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Let's take a few tweets now. We have some feedback from our viewers. Professor Enakena says, Nigeria should look for resources to massively recruit more army and police personnel, and the idle staff of Navy and Air Force should be deployed ASAP to these conflict zones to help our brave men of the army and police looking to be fighting a daunting war.
Joladine says, we keep saying funding and manpower development are the challenges, but to be honest, it's more of the political will to control the challenges. The problem is not insecurity, it is the excuse for insecurity. Accepting excuses is permission for failure to continue.
Well, Festus Akiboyewa has this tweet saying, what's the benefit of linking our phone lines to NIN, that's the National Identification Number, when terrorists are still calling families of abducted people boldly without security agencies apprehending them? The enemy within the government must be fished out if we must have security.
Success isn't about how one's life looks to others. It's about how it feels to one. Nigerians don't feel safe no more. Obviously, some persons are winning by making this government look really bad. It's time we brought in, it says machineries, I don't know if it's machineries or mercenaries, to change this dreadful feeling. Well, thank you for your feedback this beautiful Monday morning. Thank you so much for writing in as well. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
And I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.